tracking, stalking. It's my favorite way to hunt. Charismatic megafauna, big game, is my favorite way to hunt. What are some good tools for the job? What are some good rifles for this? Top tracking and stalking rifles. That's what we're going to talk about today. If that interests you, stay tuned to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, the right way, with God Almighty at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am blessed to serve you as host. Bullet points for the bio in the show notes. But I've been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the Southeast to Alaska to my favorite rugged Intermountain West Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana. And I love tracking. I've done all kinds of hunting. There is a time and a place for different kinds of hunting, but I much prefer tracking, stalking to stand hunting, saddle hunting, sitting in a tree or just sitting in a blind and just sitting there. It's not my favorite. I did it growing up. That's just what we did. We thought that's just how you hunted deer, or how you had to hunt deer. Even that's not true, because a lot of times growing up hunting, I would hunt from a canoe, which I preferred. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to hunt charismatic megafauna, deer, elk, antelope, things like that. But my favorite is stalking or tracking, and throw in there still hunting. You might think, well, couldn't you just use any rifle for this that's suitable for deer? And the answer is, of course, yes, right? You can do it with a bow. I got my elk last year spot and stalk hunting with a shotgun. So it doesn't even have to be a rifle. If we're talking rifles, some lend themselves way more than others to this form of hunting. And I'm here to tell you that, sadly, the vast majority of new rifles on the American market today are not good for this. They are subpar. They are a poor choice. Why? Because most rifles on the American market today, we've had this trend for the past, 10 years, for what I would call a belly gun or a bench rest gun. A gun that's meant to be shot off a bench or a bipod or from the prone position on your belly, with a big, huge, giant scope, because people are very concerned about shooting small groups off a steady rest off a bench. Generally means they're going to have a big scope, which means even if the gun's not heavy, the gun is generally top heavy. Anything more than usually a 4-power scope would be a very, very slim, like 2 to 7, or a very, very slim 3 to 9. Anything bigger than that, and it starts getting pretty obese and unwieldy. And that's the vast majority of rifles on the market. Everybody wants let me put it this way. You are almost certainly hurting yourself by having any scope higher than a 10 power in this kind of hunting, in any kind of terrain. I don't care if it's the wide open of the Southwest, which I've been blessed to live in and hunt in, some of the wide open deserts that we have, to the Great Plain ecosystems. You're just hurting yourself if you're doing this kind of hunting with that kind of rifle. Those rifles don't lend themselves to that. I'm going to say, if the gun was designed to be shot off a bench, just throw it out. If it's got a scope higher than 10 power, throw it out. If it's got a big, giant, high optics mount, like where the optic is far above the bore line, throw it out. In my experience, the vast majority of shots that you're going to take tracking and stalking are from a standing position. You standing on your legs, standing up, no support, no shooting sticks, I've guided and I've used those for people that really needed them, but just standing, which means you need to do the majority of your practice where? Standing, shooting, standing, throwing the gun up and getting a quick snapshot from the standing, where the vast majority of your shots are going to come from, standing. And then also the other classic shooting positions that you should train in: standing, kneeling, sitting, and prone. And by prone, I don't mean with a bipod or a tripod. You're generally not going to have time for that. I mean, maybe off your pack. But you should be good at shooting prone without any rest, without your gun touching the ground at all. Just you holding the gun in the prone. There are some other improvised shooting positions, but I would say probably 70% or more standing shots. And then you might get some kneeling, you might get some sitting, you might get some where you're shooting braced off a tree, but those are opportunistic. You generally want to be good shooting from the standing, and your rifle should be designed accordingly so that it is good from being shot off the standing position without support. And that's really hard to do on today's American market. Now you go back, to rifles that our fathers and grandfathers hunted with. That's the majority of the rifles. But sadly, the majority of the rifles today weren't designed for that. They just weren't. So I guess I just mentioned fathers and forefathers. Let us go to historically what have been seen as some great tracking and stalking rifles here in America. Obviously, Africa is different. I've never hunted Africa. I don't know. But in America, the one that comes to mind the most is the Remington 760 or 7600. Pump action, fast handling, meant to be shot from a standing position. Good iron sights, and if you want to, the ability to mount an optic. These were the go-to deer hunting rifle for people that hunted this way, even people that hunted from a stand, but most people that hunted this way. And it's still renowned among trackers and stalkers. It's a phenomenal rifle. It's one of the reasons why I don't generally care for lever actions. I'm a practical guy when it comes to, I'm picking out a gun generally. I'm like, okay, this gun, but is there something that does that better? And when I look at most lever actions, I'm like, okay, but then I'm stuck to a rounded bullet. Maybe that will matter, maybe it won't. I'm not the guy that tells you got to have a bullet with a BC of over, 0.5. That's not me. But I'm not going to relegate myself to 1870s technology if I don't have to. But I look at a lever action and I'm like, well, why wouldn't I just get a pump action Remington 760? Because 30-06, 308 calibers, 35 Whalen calibers. Pump's going to be faster and easier for follow-up shots than a lever action. A lever action is not slow, but it's not as fast as the pump. And I can get a full-powered rifle cartridge. Despite what you may think, the 760, 7600s are known for being very accurate. Now, they may not be a quarter MOA off a rest accurate, but who cares? You're not going to shoot it off a rest unless you're sighting it in. So that doesn't really matter. They're a handy weight. They're very ergonomic. They generally point well and shoot well. That's historically one of the good rifles for this. Another historic one, although I just dogged on lever actions for me, in the Northeast especially, a Marlin 336 or a Winchester Model 94. You can kind of duke it out which one of those you like or don't like. I think the 94 is a little bit faster handling, a little bit svelter and sleeker, which is good when you're crawling through brush and all kinds of stuff like that. But the 336 does better with optics. It just has a flat upper and it's kind of a monolithic side eject receiver, which is just way better for mounting optics. I know it can be done on a 94, but just the 336 lends itself better to that. Though it's a little bit less, I would say, sleek than the 94. So either one of those, though. Those historically, good for tracking, good for stalking, out to 150, 200 yards, they're fine. And in many places, especially east of the Mississippi, if you're going to do this, who cares about out past 200 yards? Many people that have hunted east of the Mississippi have never shot a deer past 200 yards. And if you think you have, did you actually range it or actually measure it? Because a lot of people way overestimate range. So the vast majority of people just east of the Mississippi, you're not shooting past that, so it doesn't matter. And in spot and stalk and still hunting in general, I'm a big fan of the max point blank range shooting because it's way more likely that you're going to get a short shot opportunity, a fast shot from the standing, than you're going to be sitting there with a rest and ranging and dialing. You're just probably not going to be time for that. You're not going to do that. And if you're stalking and you have to, let's say you shoot the elk and you have to get it anyway, why would I shoot it from 500 when I could just walk up to 300 and shoot it? If you're good at stalking and tracking, you should, unless there's some weird thing with terrain or it's about to get dark or something, you should be able to get within 3 football fields of an animal without it knowing you're there. So historically, those were some really good ones. And not the only ones, right? I've never actually seen anybody hunt with these, but I think in days of yore, the Savage 99s were pretty popular when a lot of people hunted this way and tracked and stalked. I've no experience with those other than maybe playing with them at a gun store. Now let's talk about some of the best ones on the market today. The Ruger Scout Rifle. Now, I like the Ruger because it's controlled round feed, it's rugged, it's reliable. Yeah, I live in Grizz country. There are wolves and mountain lions and things like that. That's an added bonus, but I just like the positive feed and extraction. If you've ever had the rim break off the back of a cartridge or a extractor on a bolt snap, which I have, that can happen on a push feed system. I've never heard of it happening on a controlled round feed like a Winchester Model 70 system, which would be the same system in the Ruger Scout Rifle. Also, it's light and handy. 6 point something pounds, 7 point something pounds. It's light and handy, and it's meant to be shot from the standing, not from a prone position. It comes with good backup iron sights. Now, you could just run it with the irons, but if you want an optic, like not that long ago, was it 2 years ago, I was hunting some pretty rugged country in Hell's Canyon. This is not the first time, but a pretty good illustration. Right? I was hiking Hell's Canyon, fell a lot, got hung up in something, and I was using a good optic and good scope mounts, but my scope mount came loose. Well, I have iron sights on that gun, so I didn't have to call it quits. I knew that my iron sights were still good on there. It's controlled round feed. It's available in stainless steel. If you can get stainless, almost always get stainless, unless you have a certain finish in mind like nitride. But stainless steel, light, handy, fast handling. It's a bolt action, which I like, especially out west where I might get a longer shot. But I've taken a few deer with the Ruger Scout Rifle, and I really like it. Whitetail, mule deer, it's a good rifle for this. Hunting out in the rain, which rain, bunch of wet leaves. It's some of the best stalking, still hunting environment you can have. In the rain, in real fresh snow, great for this. Just the ruggedness of a bolt action. You get some ice in there. It gets rained on all day. It's stainless steel. It's rugged. You're not really concerned about it. I like the Ruger Scout Rifle for this. I'll also throw in the Steyr. The Steyr Scout Rifle is a push feed, but it's also very light, fast handling. And the thing it has above the Ruger is it comes in more calibers. I think it's available in 7mm 08. It's also available in 243, which is awesome. I wish they made a Ruger Scout Rifle in 243. I should mention, the Ruger Scout Rifle generally is in 308, and most Scout Rifles will be in 308. And the go-to Scout Rifle caliber. And 308 is a fantastic caliber for this, as is 30-06. The next one I'll mention, a Winchester Model 70 featherweight. You save the weight, you should probably going to be walking a lot, but this is kind of the original, premier one of this, and they are phenomenal. They're also quite expensive and collectible, but a pre-64 Winchester Model 70 featherweight still has the iron sights on it for reasons I already mentioned. Sleek, felt, fast handling, and just smooth as butter with the action. Mine is crazy accurate. It's still got the original barrel. I don't plan on really modifying anything, the barrel or anything on it. It's a phenomenal rifle. Because it is such a rarity to have one in such good condition, and it's really nice. I didn't get it as a collectible. I got it as a hunter, but since I have the Ruger Scout, if it's really nasty weather, I'm probably taking the Ruger Scout just because I would feel less bad about ruining it than ruining the pre-64 Winchester Model 70, which is blued steel, which that's just what they had back then, right? We're talking 30s, 40s, 50s. Blued steel is what was the standard. But a phenomenal rifle, and if I'm being honest, a much slicker, smoother action than the Ruger. But one of those pre-64s in 30-06, 308, 243, they're a good choice for a tracking, stalking rifle. Another one I'm going to mention, maybe not as old, but the Remington, let's call them the smaller bolt-action rifles. So I'm going to say the Model 7, not the 700, but the Model 7, which is a smaller version of the 700. Phenomenal for this. The 600, the 660, and the 673. Kind of the Mohawk style of rifle. They kind of have some of them have a shotgun rib on the top. Very small, handy, but very powerful rifles. So these also would be very good. Now they are push feed, which I don't like as much, but if you're not going to be hunting in a bunch of ice or with a bunch of animals that want to kill you and eat you, then you might not care about the push feed. So they're good. Again, the 600, the 660, the 673, you're not hunting in really nasty conditions where you might snap off the back of a case or something like that. Nothing wrong with those. They're great rifles. And they were very much designed for this kind of tracking, stalking, closer in style of hunting, those 600, 660, 673s. They were available in some odd calibers that you might not want to get it in unless you're an avid reloader, but they were also available in like 308. I believe they were only ever in short actions. Unlike the Model 70s, you're not going to get them in like a 30-06 or standard length cartridge. Now, another one that you may not think of is the Ruger Mini 30. Ruger Mini 30 is a great gun. I actually used a Mini 14 in police work for a time. They're good. I like them. I'm not going to say they're better than an AR-15, but I'm going to say in a lot of situations they're just as good. But this is the Mini 30. The Mini 30 is in 7.62 by 39. Now, the vast majority of 7.62 by 39 is not suitable for this task. Most of it's full metal jacket or a hollow point in name only. Like it has a hollow point, but it was not designed for terminal performance. It's like a Wolf or a Tula hollow point. I'm not saying that's a good choice, but really good premium hand loaded, or there's quite a few good factory loads meant for hunting bigger game, like meant for hunting controlled expansion in 7.62 by 39. So, with some of that ammunition in a Mini 30, not a bad handling little carbine, and it's semi-automatic. So you might want a semi-auto for this. If you do, this is a good choice. Unlike a lot of things in 7.62 by 39, it actually you can mount a good optic, and in fact they come with scope mounts. So that's a big deal. They come with scope mounts. So you can get a good LPVO and mount it right on the top of that gun, or red dot if you want. I would put it in the same vein as like the 30-30 lever actions I talked about earlier. A 94, a 336. Inside of 200 yards, it'll do fine. Another one I'm going to mention, because I like Savage, and a lot of their guns have gone this way where they don't have iron sights, or they're just meant to be shot off a bench. They make a lot of like target rifles. But they also make a model called the Hog Hunter. Although it's not stainless steel, it pretty much checks all the other boxes. It's got iron sights. It's in 308, possibly some other calibers, but a good potent cartridge, a good affordable rifle that's meant to be shot off the shoulder. So the Savage Hog Hunter is another one that you might want to put on your radar. And like most other things in hunting, the rifle is important. Like you should have a good rifle, but whether it's a Ruger or a Winchester or, a Savage, that's way less important than the skill of tracking, the skill of stalking. And the way you do that is by getting out and actually doing it. So remember what's actually important. And the skill of actually being able to shoot from the shoulder. Now, I grew up competing in more traditional rifle competitions. I still do them, where you shoot in traditional positions. Standing, kneeling or sitting, prone. And you should know your ethical distance, and you should know how to call shots. I'd say whatever distance you could put rounds routinely in a paper plate, if you're talking about a deer-sized animal, that's the distance you should shoot at. And whatever distance that is for you, for standing. If that's 100 yards for you standing, that's great. If it's 200 yards for you standing, that's great. But you should know that. But just get out there and do it. And that is going to bring us to the tactical verse of the day. I haven't been doing these on every episode recently, and somebody called me out on it, and they said they really miss they miss the tactical verse of the day. So, you know what? They're right for calling me out on that. NIV version, this is Proverbs 12:27. The lazy do not roast any game, but the diligent feed on the riches of the hunt. My commentary. Get out there, man, and get after it. Put some meat on the table. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.